Hello guys and girls, and welcome to today's video. As you can see here on the screen, our topic today is reviewing body paragraphs. So we actually started doing some review a couple of weeks ago over on-demand writing. The first week we just went over some of the basic vocabulary that we need to know and remember with on-demand writing. And then last week we reviewed introduction paragraphs. And so this week we are continuing that review by talking about body paragraphs. I do want to remind you that the whole purpose, the whole reason why we are doing these reviews is because as eighth graders, one of the areas that we are going to be tested in at the end of the year is on-demand writing. So it's something, even though we had a whole unit about on-demand writing at the beginning of the year, I just want to make sure that all of this stays fresh in your mind. And then also, like we talked about last week, you do have an on-demand coming up here in a few weeks. And so I want to make sure that everyone is prepared and ready to be successful when we do get to that here in a couple of weeks. So let's go ahead and jump in here and get started. First thing we need to review is what is a body paragraph. Your body paragraphs are the middle paragraphs of your on-demand essay. And we talked last week about the introduction, and we said that the introduction is the very first thing that your audience is going to read. And after they read that introduction, the next step is the body paragraphs. There are 3 of them. And the body paragraphs build on the ideas that are presented in your thesis statement, which is something that we talked about last week. If your body paragraphs were a shape, the shape that you see here on the screen is what they would be. It's kind of a rectangle shape, and it includes several elements. It starts with a transition word and then a topic sentence, and then it moves on to some evidence that you are going to explain. And remember, we've talked all year about how we are referring to evidence as our E1 and explanation as our E2. After your first E1 and E2, you were going to include an internal transition and then another piece of evidence that you explain. And then at the end of the paragraph, you have your concluding sentence. Moving forward, we're going to talk about each part of the body paragraph just in a little bit more detail, starting with the beginning, which is the transition word, and the topic sentence. We want all of our body paragraphs to begin with a transition, and these can be really simple. Words like first, second, next, and finally, those are all examples of transition words that you might use at the beginning of a body paragraph. Obviously, if it's the first body paragraph, a great transition word to use would be the word first. If it's the second body paragraph, you might begin with second or next. If it's the third body paragraph, or maybe even the conclusion, you could begin with finally. After you include that transition word, then you are going to write your topic sentence. The ideas for your topic sentence come straight from your thesis statement, which we talked about last week. Remember, we said that your thesis statement is like the foundation of your paper. And if you have a strong thesis, you are going to have a strong essay. This is what I mean by that. If you have a really good thesis statement, you're going to be able to just pull that out for your topic sentence, and then you're going to be able to write your paragraph. So whatever that first idea was in your thesis statement, that's what your first body paragraph is going to be about. And then whatever your second idea was in your thesis statement in the introduction paragraph, that's what your second body paragraph is going to be about. And I do want you to remember that whatever you put as your topic sentence, the whole paragraph should focus on that topic. So whatever evidence you use or whatever explanations you give need to relate back in some way to the topic sentence. After you include your transition word in your topic sentence, then you're going to move on to your E1 and your E2. Couple of reminders about this. Remember, we said E1 stands for evidence. Your evidence should always begin with a good sentence starter. My personal favorite is "the text says," just because I think it's pretty simple, pretty easy. But there are other options like "according to the text" or "the author states." Just make sure that you don't jump right into the words from the text, but you do give a good sentence starter to begin. Also, when you are citing evidence, it needs to be from the text, meaning you do not put it in your own words, you don't summarize it, it should be exactly what the author says. And since we are using the author's words and not our own words, we use quotation marks to show that it came from the text. When you get to your explanation, the whole purpose is to explain how your evidence supports your topic sentence. And this next part is super important. Your E2 should be at least 2 sentences. We have done lots of ABE writing recently. We've even done some practice with on-demand writing. And what's funny is I feel pretty confident that if I asked the class right now, hey, how many sentences is your E2 supposed to be? Pretty much everyone could tell me that it is supposed to be 2 sentences, but I still have lots of friends who are only giving me 1 sentence for your E2. Remember, it should be at least 2, but more is even better. The evidence comes from the text, the E2 comes from our brain, and some good sentence starters for your E2 might be something like, this evidence shows, or this clearly demonstrates. If-then statements are also great, or not only, but also works really well too, especially these two for the second sentence of your E2. After your first E1 and E2, you're going to include an internal transition. That might look something like additionally, furthermore, in addition to, in the same way, or also. And then you jump right into your second E1 and E2. We just talked about that, so I'm not going to go into too much detail about it, but I do want you to remember that your E1 should come from the text, it should support your topic sentence, and then your E2 should be at least 2 sentences. At the end of the body paragraph, you are going to write one final sentence. We call that your concluding sentence. And the purpose of the concluding sentence is to just wrap up your ideas, kind of wrap up the paragraph. And some good ways to start that concluding sentence might be clearly, based on this evidence, it is clear, or this evidence clearly shows. I know that was super quick, but I do want you to just remember that a body paragraph is really similar to an ABE that we've been practicing. So we've done some practice with this already this year. Let's talk about what your assignment for today is going to be. First, we're going to read this passage together. It is called Should He Get Paid? And then we'll talk about what you're going to be writing. And I'll just go ahead and also note that this is posted on Google Classroom for you. College sports bring in billions of dollars a year, but the athletes who play them don't get a penny. Is that fair? It was February 20th, 2019, and the basketball game between Duke University's Blue Devils and University of North Carolina's Tar Heels was about to begin. The stands were packed and the fans were pumped. Tickets for the game had almost reached Super Bowl prices. One ticket went for a whopping $10,652. Duke and UNC have a long-standing and super intense rivalry, but that was only part of the excitement. The other part? Duke player Zion Williamson. At 6 feet 7 inches and 285 pounds, bigger than most NBA players, Williamson, 18, is unlike any player college basketball has ever seen. On the court, he is as graceful as a dancer and as powerful as a freight train. His sky-high jumps and show-stopping slam dunks have earned him millions of fans. He's often compared to Michael Jordan and LeBron James. You might think that this teenage prodigy is raking in the big bucks, but in fact, he doesn't make a cent. All the money that the Blue Devils bring in goes to Duke, not to Williamson or any other player. That's because, according to the National Collegiate Athletic Association, college athletes are not allowed to be paid. But should they be? College sports, particularly basketball and football, are a very big business involving a very large amount of money. Ticket sales are just one slice of the pie. A top team can secure lucrative endorsement deals. For example, Nike pays Duke millions to outfit its players in Nike gear, essentially turning the players into walking advertisements. Top college teams can also help increase their school enrollments and bump up donations from alumni. And then there's the money from TV deals and merchandise like hats and sweatshirts. So if these teams bring in so much money, why don't the players get any of it? After all, without the players, there wouldn't be any teams. The thing is, colleges don't just make a huge amount of money on sports, they also spend a huge amount. Stadiums are not cheap. Neither are the equipment and team travel, not to mention coaches' salaries and scholarships for student athletes. According to a 2014 NCAA study, only 24 of the top 129 college football programs make a profit. Some say that forcing schools to pay athletes could do more harm than good. If players were paid, many schools might not be able to afford to keep their athletic programs running. They'd certainly have less money for sports like swimming, cross country, gymnastics, and soccer, sports that don't bring in the kind of money that football and basketball do. Why should the students who play these sports have to suffer for the benefit of a few? Then again, top coaches make millions. Is it fair for them to make so much while the athletes themselves get nothing? After all, being a college athlete can be like working a full-time job while also going to school. A 2006 NCAA study found that top-tier college athletes dedicate an average of 37 hours per week to their sport. Paid to play. On the other hand, it's not quite accurate to say that college athletes get nothing. Many get tuition scholarships. Top athletes can even get completely free educations, often with housing and food costs included. They may also get free access to trainers and tutors. Plus, college players get coaching experience and exposure that can set them up for success if they pursue professional careers in their sport. What's more, if young athletes want to get paid to play, they do have options. For examples, they can join a professional league overseas. Soon, elite high school basketball players will also have the chance to earn $125,000 a season in the NBA's minor league, and potentially go straight from there to the pros. And for extraordinary athletes like Williamson, college is often only a brief stopover before they are old enough to go pro anyway. Currently, the NBA requires players to be at least 19 years old and a year out of high school. Then again, fewer than 2% of college athletes go on to have professional careers. As for the rest, some may look back and notice that while their school got a lot from them, they didn't get much from their school. Some college athletes are so busy with their sport that they don't have enough time or energy to devote to their studies. As a result, they may fall behind or even drop out. Would paying athletes really help, though, or would it make things worse? Some say that paying college athletes would turn them into employees, and isn't the whole point of college to be a student and get an education? As for Williamson, his future in the NBA seems certain. That is, of course, unless something unforeseen, like a career-ending injury, should happen. That awful possibility surely crossed many minds when 36 seconds into the big Duke-UNC game in February, his left sneaker suddenly fell apart, causing Williamson to fall and sprain his knee. Fortunately, the injury was not too serious. Williamson took a few weeks off and then returned to the court ready to dazzle his fans, but not to get paid. Your assignment today is to write a body paragraph, not an entire essay, just a body paragraph based on this prompt. It says, read the prompt below and then use the passage titled, "Should he get paid?" to finish the body paragraph that has been started for you. College sports, particularly basketball and football, are a very big business involving a very large amount of money. According to the National Collegiate Athletic Association, however, college athletes are not allowed to be paid. Is this fair? Should college athletes be paid? Write an essay in which you debate this topic. Include evidence from the provided passage to support your ideas. On your paper, you are going to notice that I have given you a topic sentence. It is highlighted in yellow on the screen, but it is not highlighted on your paper. It says, first, college athletes should get paid because they help generate large amounts of money from their schools. Your assignment today is to find an E1 in the text that supports this topic sentence, and then you're going to write an E2 explaining your evidence. You are going to give me an internal transition, another E1 and E2, and a concluding sentence to finish up this paragraph. So again, the topic sentence has been done for you. You are coming up with E1, E2, internal transition, E1, E2, and a concluding sentence. When you have that finished, please turn it in to the podium by the TV.